Welcome. Thanks for being here today. Appreciate that you would choose to carve out some time. I know there's a lot of other things you could be doing, and I know that especially in today's world, this idea of like I can be a Christian and not go to church is really popular. Maybe that's theologically true, but I would also argue that you can't be a healthy Christian. And so, thanks for being here. I appreciate that you would choose to carve out some of your time. I also want to welcome those of you who are watching online as well. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for choosing to watch this video. And I hope that you experience God as well, even on the other side of that screen, and that you sense a desire to want to grow in your relationship with Him as well. So today we are starting a brand new series called Suburban Sins. And here's kind of the idea behind this series is that I think for every single one of us, there is this danger that we can so easily fool ourselves and think we're better than we really are. And I don't think that's on purpose. I don't think that we have any, malicious intent inside. I didn't see any of us walking in this morning, with our nose held high or anything. I just think it happens over time that we can be fooled into getting maybe an improper perspective of who we are and what we still struggle with. And for most of us, when we think of the word sins, we think of like the bad ones, and I use quotation marks there on purpose, but when we think of sins, we think of things like murder and adultery and, bank robbers and drug lords and, all sorts of other criminal, things like that. Or maybe if in your mind, when you think of the term sinners, you picture people like Hitler or Stalin or your boss or your mother-in-law, or whatever. Not my mother-in-law. My mother-in-law is awesome, but yours, maybe sort of thing. But, and we think, well, I'm not like that person, or I don't do those things. I don't commit those sins, or, at least not a lot, or at least not anymore. And so we start to get this view of ourselves, this perspective of ourselves that, yeah, you know what, maybe I do have it all together a little bit. Maybe okay, I'm not perfect, but I'm certainly not a sinner either, right? But the reality is, yeah, we are, okay? Every single one of us, we are sinners. There was a meeting here, this is probably 3 or 4 months ago now at this point, but different pastors from our area, not our city, okay, so don't go and try and find this person, but from our area, there's a meeting here with a bunch of pastors, and we were just talking about being honest with ourselves and our shortcomings and honest before God. And I remember Kevin was running the meeting, and he asked one pastor, just point blank, he said, "Hey, have you sinned today?" And this guy, as straight-faced, as serious as he could be, he went, "Nope, I haven't sinned today." And I tell you, man, I took a step back. I was waiting for lightning to strike, that's like the most absurd thing I've heard in a while, because yeah, you have, okay, and if you didn't think so, you just lied, so now you did, and like, the reality is we all sin, okay, all the time. And that's not something to be proud of. I'm not saying we should wear it like a badge of honor. I'm just saying it's simply the reality. From God's perspective, He says that no one is righteous, not even one. And no matter how good we may look on the outside, no matter how many, white picket fence, nice buildings, suburban faces we can put on living in, the North Branch community, and we feel good about ourselves, underneath all of that, there are sins that we all struggle with. And maybe they don't seem as detrimental on the outside. I would argue they're even more than some of the others. Maybe they don't seem as bad as some others, but all sin hurts us. I can't think of any sin that doesn't hurt other people. All sin is not God's will for our lives. And so this series is about taking an honest look at what some of these suburban sins are, looking underneath the surface a little bit and discovering, okay, here's the issue with these, but more than just here's the issue, what does God instruct us to do as an alternative to some of these sins that we struggle with? Now, about a month ago, maybe a little bit more, is the weekend right before Memorial Day weekend. My wife and I took a trip up north to Bluefin Bay. It's along the North Shore. We'd gotten a gift certificate from some people here at church. If you were a part of that, I just want to say thank you. It was awesome. But anyway, we take a long weekend up. It's a 4-day weekend. And along the North Shore, I'm not an outdoorsy person, okay? If you've been here for a while, you know that. there's not really a whole lot else to do along the North Shore, right? And so leading up to this kind of, 4-day getaway, I was planning a bunch of stuff that we could do to fill our days with, to try and give my wife, Casey, a great experience up there, and wanted to make sure we hit a bunch of things. And the first 2 days were awesome, okay? We were just having a great time, beautiful weather, enjoying the time away and enjoying up north. But the third day, our last full day there, things started to unravel a bit. Now, we took this picture in the morning before I knew what else was going to happen, okay? We look happy. This is not the picture we would have taken at the end of the day, okay? So this is that third morning. It's beautiful out. It's like sunny and 70. We had planned on that day heading up to Grand Portage to see the waterfall and National Monument and all that sort of stuff. And so we walked to breakfast that day, and things are great. I mean, the world was awesome. But after breakfast, as we're heading back to the hotel room, Casey starts to feel sick. And so we get back, and she decides to sleep for about 3 or 4 hours. And I'm just sitting there in the hotel room on the couch watching cable TV. Now, I've not had cable TV in about 20 years. Turns out I haven't missed a thing, okay? It's the worst thing ever created. It's super boring. And so I'm sitting there, and on one hand, I'm feeling bad for my wife, okay? On the other hand, I'm also getting a little impatient with like, come on, we got stuff to do, and I want to give you this great day, so hurry up and stop feeling sick, okay? And so I got issues. You're going to hear about some of them. So anyway, a little after noon, she wakes up, and she's starting to feel a little better, and she says, you know what, I don't want to head up all that way to Grand Portage yet. Let's just do something else. And I thought, yes, good, okay, I can salvage the day. There's an ice cream shop in Grand Marais that I wanted to take her to. What better on a semi-upset stomach than ice cream? So we get in the car and drive half an hour up north to Grand Marais, and when we get there, the ice cream shop had burned down. So that's cool. Now we're in Grand Marais, and we just spent the day there before, and again, not outdoorsy people. So there's nothing, there's one street in Grand Marais. You have a half an hour there, you've seen everything there is to see, okay? So we're walking back through the town and went in there, saw that shop, saw those overpriced souvenirs, except now instead of being 70 and sunny, it's 50 and windy, and just like, we're not dressed for it. We're cold and shivering and I'm trying to do everything I can to salvage this day for my wife. About 3:30, something like that, she says, hey, you know what? I'm feeling better. Let's head up to Grand Portage. Say, oh, yes, cool. This is awesome. She loves history sort of stuff. I've been there before. This is going to be really great for her. And so we walk all the way back across town to where our car was parked. And before we leave, I don't know what it was. I just take a quick look. How late are they open? Well, they close in 10 minutes and we're 40 minutes away. So that's off the table. It's our last day here, so I'm not going to get to do this thing with her that I thought she was going to like. And man, I keep trying to make this day work, right? And so we're sitting there and like, what are we going to do? I don't know. Let's drive the Gunflint Trail. Let's just see what we can see, right? And so we just start heading off on that road, and we're driving along, and we see this sign for a lake, and let's go find the lake, right? And we drive. It must have been 45 minutes down this barely paved dirt road to find this little lake, and the ground was so horrible, I end up ruining the front end of our car. It's still grinding to this day a month later because I haven't had the time or the money to fix it. If you're a mechanic, talk to me afterwards. But anyway, so that's not going well either, right? And I'm stressing out about this day. Okay, how can I save the day? What can I do to make this work, right? And so we head back to Grand Marais, and there's this taco place I'd seen that I wanted to try, and we both love tacos. And when we get there, guess what they're out of? The meat that we want, okay? And so that was there. We end up getting some other tacos that weren't even good at all. And it's 8, 9 o'clock, and I think here's, watch out, kids. We get back to the hotel room, right? It's just the two of us. No kids, last night there, if you get my drift. And then my girls want to FaceTime video chat.
Anybody?
Listen, I had purposefully FaceTimed them earlier in the day to avoid this later on, right? And I tell you what, this happy face is a total lie. I I completely lost it, okay? We did not talk the rest of the night. We did not talk the rest of the 4-hour ride home. That's all on me, okay? I have issues. It's not good. I'm trying to work through them. But here's the thing. I had tried so stinking hard to salvage this day, and it was just one thing after another. No matter how much I planned and strategized, and I was trying to control every possible element that came up to give my wife a great day, and it ended up all backfiring. It was the worst day of the vacation, all because of my control sort of issues. And here's the thing. That's embarrassing for me to tell you. I think she's forgiven me by now. But all of us struggle with control. This is part of just being a human. I don't think any of us like to be called control freaks, right? But I guarantee you, ask the people around you to be honest, every single one of us are a control freak in at least one area of life. It just seems to be our natural bent. We want to control or dictate outcomes or manage and manipulate situations and people to try and get what we want to happen to actually happen. We hold on and we strive for control so much. But here's the thing about control. We actually have very little of it. You know? I mean, we can control what speed we drive on the road. You can control what food you put in your bodies. We can control how many hours we scroll on TikTok at night. But much beyond that, and control starts to decline pretty rapidly. There are so many things in our lives where we actually have zero control. Yet we try and we work towards it and we stress and we get all worked up inside. You and I, we cannot control the weather, okay? No matter how many times you pray that your kid's graduation is sunny or your wedding date is sunny and you get all stressed and looking at the weather and worked up, you can't control the weather, okay? Let it go. But we can't because we have control issues. We have no control over the seasons and how short summer is going to be. The fact that it's already July blows my mind. Where is the summer going, you know? But yet we get all worked up and anxious about it and like, oh, I don't want winter to come. Oh, no, we got to try and savor this sort of thing. And we try and control. You can't control the seasons. We can't control gravity, you know? You can't control the past. It's already happened. And with so many variables, we can't control the future either. I think for a lot of us, we try to control the financial aspect of our lives. And there are some good principles to follow. There's being wise with our money that is good and beneficial, but we got to come to grips, man. We can't control the economy. You can't control where the stock market is going to head. We can't control inflation and how overpriced homes are right now. You can't control whether or not you're going to get a raise this next year or not. And so often we're like, okay, I got to make this work and I got to make this work and I got to have this much money. Listen, you can't really control that stuff. We can't control other people. I think so much of our time and mental energy is trying to impress other people and trying to change other people's minds and opinions and beliefs and values. And, you know, maybe if I do this, they'll treat me a little better. And maybe if I do this, they'll do a favor. Listen, once people are over the age of 18, you can't control them at all. It just does not work. We can try and influence. We can try and lead. Those are all fine things. But to force someone to behave a certain way, it's off the table. We can't control that. You and I, we can't control the family we're born into and the privileges or the baggage that come along with that. We can't control the genetics we inherit. I know in my family, on both sides, my mom and my dad, there is a long history in just about everybody I'm aware of cancer, of diabetes, of heart problems, of high cholesterol, high blood pressure, all those things. I am basically a ticking time bomb, okay? I mean, are there some things I can do to try and mitigate some of those? Yeah, there are, but we just need to be honest enough with ourselves. No matter who we are, how much we exercise, how many green superfoods we eat, really we are absolutely powerless to determine whether or not we get cancer. Healthy people all the time get cancer. Healthy people all the time have organ failure. We have no control over when and where and how we die. control is an illusion at best. We keep grasping for it. We keep wanting to find it, but it's like the end of the rainbow. We never reach it. We never have the control that we strive to have. And here's the thing that I think is hard for us to understand and even harder for us to accept. The level of control that we strive to have is actually a sin. Because at its core, behind all of our control issues is a lack of faith. It's a lack of trust in God. And we would never say this out loud. I'm sure we could all justify our actions to each other. But I think inside, if we're honest with ourselves, what we're actually saying is, God, I don't trust that you can take care of me. Therefore, I need to take care of me. Therefore, I need to be self-sufficient. I need to be the one in charge. I need to make sure and get the outcome that I think is best. I need to be my own boss. And I think it's a fear or a worry or maybe the result of some past trauma, whatever it is. We say, God, I'm not sure you can be trusted. And so that means I have to trust myself. Our control issues really highlight this lack of trust that we have. And this is not new for those of us in the 21st century. This is something that's been going on for a long time. Jesus addressed it in the first century. Now, he just gets done telling a parable about a guy who wanted to control all his money, and then he thinks he could rest and relax. And Jesus goes on to tell his disciples this. He says, that's why I tell you not to worry about everyday life, whether you have enough food to eat or enough clothes to wear. Life is more than food, and your body is more than clothing. Now, I don't want to throw this disclaimer in here. This is not Jesus saying just be irresponsible with everything, okay? That's not it at all. But what he's trying to help his disciples see was that, hey, listen, there's a bigger perspective than you have right now. It's more than just, okay, am I going to be able to survive, make it another 24 hours? These first century disciples did not have the conveniences and amenities that we do. It was very much a focused struggle to make sure, okay, can I make it to tomorrow? Am I going to have enough food for my family? And Jesus says, okay, that's important, but let's take a step back. Let me explain something that you might be missing, he told these disciples. And he goes on to give them some examples to help them understand. He says, look at the ravens. They don't plant or harvest or store food in barns. Why? For God feeds them. And you are far more valuable to him than any dumb birds, you know? He uses an example of just this raven. He says, you know what ravens don't have? Ravens don't have 5-year vision boards. Ravens don't have, stock market portfolios and analysis. Ravens aren't worried about who the next king or the next emperor of Rome is going to be. Ravens aren't worried about trying to store enough in case there's a drought next year. He says, no, they exist and God takes care of them. And then Jesus asked this rhetorical, almost in-your-face sort of question. He says, can all your worries and wanting to grip onto things and make sure you get what you need, can all of that add a single moment to your life? Of course, the answer was no. And so he says, listen, if worry can't accomplish a little thing like that, then what's the use of worrying over bigger things? So listen, there's more here at play than what you see. I want you to see things from a different perspective. He goes on, he gives another example. He says, look at all the lilies and how they grow. They don't work or make their clothing. And yet Solomon, this person that people would have had in their minds, king, riches, everything at his disposal, live in the life of luxury. Yet Solomon in all his glory was not dressed as beautifully as they are. Again, Jesus takes this thing that is so seemingly insignificant and says, yeah, but look how God does something incredible for them. He hits the same sort of question again. If God cares so wonderfully for flowers that are here today and thrown into the fire tomorrow, they have almost no value at all. If God cares that much, he will certainly care for you. Why do you have so little faith? Right there, Jesus gets to the root issue. Why do you not? He's telling his disciples, why don't you trust God? Look at the ways in which God provides and takes care of birds and flowers. What's your deal? Why don't you trust that God could do the same thing for you? And so Jesus tells us what these disciples should do instead. Rather than worry, rather than fear, rather than trying to grip everything with control, he says, don't be concerned about what to eat and what to drink. Don't worry. Don't be overwhelmed so much about such things. These things dominate the thoughts of unbelievers all over the world. But your Father already knows your needs. Seek the kingdom of God above all else, and he will give you everything you need. Jesus looks at his disciples and says, listen, don't be so concerned about this circumstance and this situation, and don't be weighed down by fear here, and don't be, so like, oh, I got to make this happen. He says, listen, there's something better that you can do. Seek God. Or in other words, trust God. God is here. He says, you and I, let's trust God. And then he tells them this line, this sentence about the heart of God that I absolutely love. He says, don't be afraid, little flock, for it gives your Father great happiness to give you the kingdom. This right here was so vastly different than anybody's view of God in the first century. For people living back then, God was someone to be feared. God was maybe someone to avoid. God was someone that you submit and serve. And yes, Lord, but Jesus said, your heavenly Father is different. Your heavenly Father has a different heart for you than maybe what you think about God. He says, not only does God have control, what he explained with the ravens and the lilies, but more than control, God is happy to take care of your needs. Happy to provide for you what you need the most. And Jesus is telling these disciples, in light of who God is, we should have confidence in where to put our trust. And the same thing he was telling the disciples 2,000 years later, I think God is trying to help us understand as well. That rather than chase after control, rather than grip so tightly onto things that are really outside of our grasp anyway, rather than follow this illusion of I have to make this work and I have to carry this and I have to bear the weight of this, she says instead, trust God. God invites us, you and I, to lay down our need for control and instead trust him. But here's the thing about trust. Trust doesn't mean we get what we want. I think a lot of times when we hear the word trust God, we think, well, then that means I'm going to get that house. If I trust God, I'm going to get that job. If I trust God, then my loved one is going to be healed. If I just have enough faith, if I just pray hard enough, if I fold my hands the right way, if I go to church 1.2 times a month, if I give some money, if I do something kind for someone less fortunate, then maybe God will wave his little magic wand and poof, my life will be awesome. That's not trust. That's just trying to control God. We've just taken our control issues to a whole new level. That's not what real trust is. Trust is deeper than that. Trust is not about an outcome, but it's about a someone. We can trust God because of who he is. And I think maybe that's why Jesus spent so much time in all of his teachings trying to help us understand what God is like, trying to help us understand the heart of our Heavenly Father. Why he said at the end of those examples about lilies and ravens, why he says, listen, it gives your Father great happiness to care for you, that we can know that God is with us, that he's not distant, that he's not disengaged, that he loves us. What God has done for us, sending his one and only Son to pay the penalty of the sins that we have committed, will commit today, will commit in the future, to make us right with him, to give us the ability to have a relationship with him. What God has done for us through Jesus, man, I think that ought to cement in us what our Heavenly Father is really like. It shows us his character and his nature, and that we have a foundation, a good, strong foundation for where to place our trust. But here's the question I think that every one of us have when we look at this. We think, how does that happen? How do we do that? You know? Maybe you've been in the middle of a situation before and you've been really struggling, you're controlling, fill in the blank with whatever your specifics are. But then some well-meaning Christian comes up to you and says, oh, I hear what you're going through. Just trust God. And you think, really? What in the world does that mean? Or maybe you hear a message like this, or you read a book or something and you think, yeah, okay, I'm inspired. God, I want to trust you more, but I don't know what to do. How do you and I learn to trust God? And I think the answer to that is the same way that we learn to trust anybody else, by getting to know them. How do you know you can trust your spouse? How do we know we can trust if you have a good boss, how do you know you can trust your boss? How do you know you can trust your sibling or a neighbor or, a cousin, whatever it might be? How do we know those things? My guess is it's not some one action grandiose thing that they did, but more than likely it's the day-to-day interactions. It's the weeks and months and years of conversations and seeing their heart and seeing their character. It's not like we flip a switch that says, oh, now I can trust you. It's this process of getting to know someone that trust just comes as a result. Paul writes a prayer for the Ephesians that talks about this so well. He says, I pray that from talking about God, his glorious unlimited resources, that he will empower you with inner strengths through his Spirit. Then Christ will make his home in your hearts as you trust in him. Your roots will grow down into God's love and keep you strong. May you have the power to understand, as all God's people should, how wide and long and high and deep his love is. May you experience, not just know about, but actually experience the love of Christ, even though it's too great to understand fully. Because then you will be made complete with all the fullness of life and power that comes from God, from knowing him, from being connected to him. If you've been around here for a while, you're going to think this is just a broken record, but the answer all the time always comes back to a relationship with God. The more we get to know who God is, the more we are strengthened on the inside and our trust grows. The more we get to know who God is, the more he makes his home in our hearts. He's not just in heaven somewhere off in the distance, but we actually know he is here with us, and trust comes as a result. The more time we spend with God, the more we experience his love, and we are made complete. We don't have to try and control situations and people and what happens because, oh, I am so good in here, Father. I trust you. The more we know who God is, the more trust just comes as a result. But not an outcome, a someone. And part of what it means to trust God, the more time we spend with him, we start to realize some things about his character. We start to realize his ability in all sorts of situations. We live in a postmodern world, where science rules all and everything that happens needs to be replicated and duplicated in a laboratory. And we're just kind of taught to believe, hey, you know what, if we can't see it, touch it, taste it, feel it, hear it, then we just think it's not true. We so quickly dismiss the possibility of the supernatural, but I want to challenge that thought for a minute. God is God. God is the one who created the heavens and the earth, whether that was 6 literal 24-hour days or some other way. He's the one behind it all anyway. The specifics can work themselves out. He's the one. Every fish, bird, plant, animal, everything that has ever been or will ever be, he has created. He is the one who set in place the natural laws that determine our world, the physics and chemistry and biology and gravity and all those certain things. And if God is powerful enough to create the laws by which our world governs, then certainly he's powerful enough to suspend those laws, right? So quickly we think, I'm not sure if God can do that. But God has stopped the sun in the sky. God has parted the Red Sea. God has raised people from the dead, and yet we have doubts about whether he could do those sorts of things for us. We would never verbalize it, but we don't trust that God is capable, that he is able to do those things. And so we think, yeah, God couldn't do a miracle in my finances, and so therefore I have to control it. God, there's no way God could do a miracle in my family, and so therefore I have to carry that weight and that burden. Why have we gotten in a habit, all of us, of not knowing who God is and that he has the ability to do more than we could ever ask or imagine? As part of who he is. And the more we get to know who he is, including his ability, the more this grows. But more than just his ability, I think the best of all is his availability. Because sometimes the miracle doesn't happen. Sometimes we still lose the house. We still lose the job. We still lose the loved one. And yet through all of that, God is still with us. He is still available to us. The more we get to know him and his presence, the more we are fulfilled and secure on the inside. Through Jesus Christ, God has given us the greatest gift we will ever receive, himself. The writer of Hebrews talks about it this way. He says, therefore, we who have fled to him for refuge, we can have great confidence as we hold to the hope that lies before us. This hope, this relationship with God, now heaven, like we talked about last week, everything that is available to us in a relationship with God. This hope is a strong and trustworthy anchor for our souls. It leads us through the curtain into God's inner sanctuary. Let's talk about some Jewish Old Testament imagery, but in other words, leads us right into the presence of God. When we believe in what Jesus has done for us, there is nothing between us and God anymore. The curtain has been torn down. There is no circumstance, no situation, no difficulty that can prevent us from being with him. The part of the thing that grows our trust in God is knowing that he is available to us. Again, who he is. A couple of weeks ago, we talked about Paul and his thorn in the flesh, and he says, oh, God, please take it away. And God says, no, my grace is all you need. Or in other words, my availability to you is what's going to make the biggest difference. Paul writes about, hey, you know what? I found the secret of living when I have control, or when I think I do, and when I don't have control. I can do everything through Christ who gives me strength, through this relationship with God. This is what he was talking about, God's availability to sustain him on the inside. And I just wonder, for all of us, how much better our lives would be if trusting God was more than just an outcome, but about a someone. Just imagine for a moment, if you're struggling right now with some sort of financial situation, maybe there's not enough money in the bank, or you're looking for a new job or a new house or whatever it might be, something money related. How much better do you think our lives could be if we could shift our trust away from, I got to have this, I got to control this, into God, I want to know you, and the security that comes from being connected to him that no home or stock market portfolio could ever purchase for it. How much better do you think it would be to live with a security that comes from knowing God? Maybe right now you're facing some sort of relational problem or struggle, and you're working so hard to change someone's mind or make them like you or get them to do what you think. What if What if we just focused on building our relationship with God, and that as a result, we could experience the freedom of knowing, God, you love me. You see infinite value in me, no matter what the relationships in my life look like. Even if everybody else is against me, God, you are for me. You love me. Don't you think that could change the way we live our days? Maybe you're staring down a disease or a diagnosis or a divorce, and you feel like, if I don't hold on, everything is going to fall apart. What if it falls apart anyway, and yet you experience a supernatural peace that God promises us in His presence? You thought this could bring you peace, but what if we built a relationship with God where we allowed Him to give us peace through simply knowing Him? See, control, again, at its heart, control is a sin. It hurts us. It damages us. We never, ever reach the goal. But rather than God just being some sort of cosmic boss that says, stop it, He offers us a better alternative. He says, get to know me. See that I am trustworthy. And I think we should take Him up on that offer.